She does offer an apology to Kenya, but even the apology, she said, "Boo boo, boo boo, I'm so boo boo." What? Like, use her name.
Right.
It just came off as so flippant.
Ooh, wait. No.
Listen.
Listen.
Wait.
I hate you for that.
Let me fix it. Welcome back to Let Me Fix It, the podcast that says we're going back to our roots this week, where we're taking it old school. I'm Francesca Ramsey. I'm a TV writer, I'm an actress, I'm a producer, and a social media consultant.
And I'm Delon Grant. I'm an actor, a singer, a photographer, a writer, and an educator. Let's go back to the roots. Let's take it back to, and we're taking it way back with
Yes.
our main event here today. But let's start with some headlines, Fran.
Well, I wanted to just do our headline about this America's Next Top Model Netflix documentary. And this was our throwback to Let Me Fix It days of old, because we did a whole movie focus season where people were like really into it, where we reviewed movies, we pitched our fixes. And as soon as I saw that this Top Model doc was coming to Netflix, I texted Delon and I was like, we have to review this. I think it would be for a great episode.
Yeah, I mean, well, you're such a fan of the show. Like, you watched it religiously. And I realized in watching the documentary, I only watched, they call them cycles. I only watched cycle 4.
The cycle thing really bothers me. This is not a period, Tyra. Because they're seasons.
I don't know. I mean, but they just started having 2 cycles a year. So maybe it was, I don't know. Just menstruation. So I only watched 1 season. I think it was the fourth season or cycle. And I barely watched that. I don't know what content. I probably was on tour or something, and that's when I was watching it.
Yeah, I know. I remember one time you visited me in Miami, and the show was on, and we definitely watched the show with a bunch of people over at my apartment. I was a super fan. Also, I am biased because I did host a podcast for Audible that came out in 2024 called We Were All Rooting for You, which was a deep dive on Top Model. So I will call myself out and say that while I was watching this doc, I had a few moments where I was like, I see where you got these
entrenched.
Well, okay. So class, before we jump in, there will be spoilers. If you haven't seen it already, pause, go watch it, come back, or just watch and hear our thoughts ahead of time. But one of the things I noticed is they started the series by Tyra saying, I want to take you back to 2020 when COVID hit and the world was binging TV. And that's the exact way that we framed the We Were All Rooting for You podcast for Audible. So I texted my producers and I was like, that is exactly how we set up the show, to just talk about how people were watching Top Model during the pandemic and seeing it through new eyes. And Delon, since you didn't watch a ton of the show, what did you think of the documentary? Just first impressions.
I mean, aside from what the controversial stuff that we'll eventually get to, I will say I love a documentary, and I thought it was very, very smart to start with Tyra's story. The entire thing starts with what Tyra went through as a model, being a Black model, the struggles therein, and then she gets this idea to do a reality show and the struggles to sell the reality show. They went to all the major networks and they couldn't get anybody. They got UPN, which was their last shot. So they really did a brilliant job of saving the cat, or giving a Save the Cat class. If you don't know what Save the Cat is, it's in any narrative when you have a character, probably your protagonist, a lead character, you want them to do something empathetic toward the beginning of the film or the TV show, so that your audience goes, okay, I understand why they're fighting for that so hard. And I can forgive all the potentially shitty things they do on the way because they have a goal and they've done something empathetic. So they did a really good job there. It took, you mentioned via text that it was dragging, and I was like, no, I didn't think it was dragging, but I hear you on that. It stayed with the everything is good and shiny for all of the episodes. 3 episodes, class.
Yeah. I watched all 3. Did you watch all 3?
I watched 2.5. I didn't get all the way
I
through
did end up watching all 3 because I was like, I just might as well get through it. Yeah. And also I'll say, class, the Save the Cat of it all. There's a really great book series called Save the Cat. That's where that idea comes from. And they have a movie series, a movie version of the book and a TV version. If you've ever wanted to get into writing for film and TV, highly recommend. Yeah, I did think it was good to hear Tyra's backstory. One thing that I wrote down that I thought was interesting is they didn't mention that Kenya Barris was a producer on the show, and he was very
Oh,
instrumental in getting the show onto television. And, it's interesting because it's really framed as like Tyra and Ken Mock were the champions of the show, and they absolutely were. But then at the same time, throughout the series, like they don't really seem to take any responsibility for like the places where the show failed. Like they're very quick to be like, well, the network. It's like, well, it was your show. So like you gotta get out of
yeah.
both ways.
That's kind of what if when we're leading toward a fix, which I'll just drop in
Yeah.
here. That was one of my big kind of gripes with it, was that like I would have rather you'd said, hey, you know what? We did it. It didn't age well.
Mm-hmm.
It hasn't aged well.
Yeah.
And, and I think she does apologize to some people that she really seemed to have harmed. But to your
Yeah.
point, they really did go, well, that was reality TV.
That was the time.
I
That
had a
was the
problem with
time.
it, but the network kept pushing us to do it. And
Yeah.
you know what? And that can very well be true. That can very
Yes.
well be true. And I'm
Yes.
sure that's their
Yes.
truth. But it also is like, yeah, you're doing it to excuse your behavior. And I'll tell you this, shame is alive and well, because you have to you have to be able to be shamed, which clearly I feel like them in the hot seat and talking around it is them just trying to get rid of the shame and keep their reputations, if I'm honest.
Yeah, that was my biggest qualm with the whole series is that I felt like Tyra more than anybody didn't really take very much responsibility, and I really got the impression that look, nobody's perfect and everyone makes mistakes, right? But like the way that she was talking about moments in the show and things that she did or things that happened, she really kind of had this like distance from everything that didn't feel like she had like a wall up the
She
whole
was
time.
performing. She was performing.
It was very weird, and like the way she was talking about things was in this, it was like felt really rehearsed. Like it just didn't feel like we were getting an honest read on her. And especially when, for example, they talked about body image, and a number of the girls were talking about having eating disorders and all those things. And when Tyra would talk about it, she was just like, people talked about my body too. It was just, that was the industry. You're like, oh my God, can you just for 1 second say like, that stuff did happen and we did play it up. And in hindsight, it was the wrong thing to do. Like, it was just this very like, the industry was tough. It was tough on me too. I mean,
well, and that's like, it's deflection is what it is,
Yes,
And
yes.
what I really did appreciate about the documentary, whoever produced it, if it wasn't, I'm sure it wasn't just Netflix. I'm sure it was sold to Netflix, but
yeah,
please correct me if I'm wrong.
I don't know who it is. Yeah.
But one thing that they did do, other than having the actual contestants on the podcast, they had, or excuse me, on the show, they had like a journalist and some people that consumed the show as well at a very young age, who gave some really positive and negative reflections.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I thought that was really great, because even when Tyra was a little distant, as you say, from the topic, they would cut to the journalist and she'd be like, no.
Yeah.
Like, and one thing Tyra kept saying was, which I think was right, she was a champion for Black models. She was trying to do something good. And I do think that like the altruism there is very true. But then at the same time, this journalist, I forget her name, she really reflected well. She said, yeah, but she was also upholding the same beauty standards that the modeling industry was. And that's the industry. So where's the middle ground? I don't know. But like, what were your take? What is your take on what that sobering conversation with the journalist?
It's so interesting because, again, my lens is being filtered through the fact that I was a fan of the show, and then I did this podcast about the show. And what we did is we broke each episode up into different themes. And I felt like they kind of tried to do that here. And while I loved that they included that journalist, what we did on our podcast that I wish they had done here is like have some real experts, like have somebody who's well versed in talking about body image and eating disorders and representation in media. And like we had Jen Posner, this really incredible journalist who's written a lot about reality television and talking about some of the tropes that were present in reality TV and how they're in many ways like more harmful than fictional narratives, because people go, oh, like that Black woman is the angry Black woman. That's exactly how they be. And like that while Tyra was trying to do positive things for representation, the show still fell into those really harmful tropes when it came to queer people, for example. They always cast like someone super religious and then someone queer and then had them kind of like butting heads.
Right.
And then they always had the Black woman framed as like the angry, difficult to work
Difficult.
with.
Yes.
Yes, exactly. And Kenya was a great example where she was sexually harassed on set and everybody acted like she was in the wrong.
Right.
And you know, she gained 5 pounds and then they're like, you're gonna be the elephant in this this photo
And that, you know
shoot.
what, that was the cycle that I watched, and I remember that distinctly, of them going like, class, when you watch it,
Yes.
spoilers, but one was a giraffe, one was a
Hmm.
cheetah, one was a
And they
what was
made
the
her
other
the
one?
elephant,
They made the other girl was like a lion or something, and then she
an
had to be the elephant.
ostrich,
An ostrich, all like thin, like, and that was
willowy
after coming out of a challenge where she had to do gluttony,
gluttony.
which was
Yes.
like, y'all are
Well,
really
and that
trying it.
in that same photo shoot, which they didn't talk about in the documentary, was that one of the girls had a friend that had died like that week, and then they had them posing in a casket, and it's like
Oh,
these are not coincidences, and they really did not talk about that in the documentary, and I feel like the producers didn't do a great job of like pushing them in that way. Like, for example, when they asked Tyra about the Jays being fired, she was just like, no, I don't want to talk about that. And like, okay, as a producer, it's your job to push, and she's allowed to say no. But like a producer's job is to say,
follow up.
so I'm giving you an opportunity to talk about this. And just to be clear, you are saying, or, you know,
You know
whatever
what?
it
And
is,
I
it's like
wonder,
they're handling her with kid gloves, kind of.
when I wonder too, to agree to do the documentary, I wonder
Yes,
if
I'm
they
sure.
had to pre-check the questions. I
Oh,
wonder if
I'm
Tyra's team
absolutely.
was like, this is not what we're not talking about this, we're not, and they could have tried to get a gotcha, you know, they could have thrown one out there while the cameras were running. But I can see her being like, no, I want final edit, I want, like, you know, what is.
Yeah, there was a rumor going around that she's a producer, and she's not a producer. I checked on IMDb, but I'm sure she did have some request about being able to
Sure.
make sure she
I
felt
mean, I would.
comfortable with certain things. Yeah, and like, and again, you definitely want to make sure. Full disclosure. Tyra and I have the same agent. And so when we were making the podcast, we reached out to her and I sent her a personal video. And our agent said to me that she's, you know, very hesitant to do stuff. She doesn't want to be ambushed, which I totally understand. And our perspective, and I'm sure the producers here did the same thing, was to say, we want you to just tell your story. We're not trying
Yeah.
to finger wag at you and say that you're the bad guy. But I do think that there was an opportunity here when she did say things that maybe bumped with the narrative of the show to show some of those alternative perspectives that weren't just the models, right? That weren't just the people who were like super
The
close to the
victims.
experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, you know, for example, when the Shandy thing was talked about, that broke my heart because I remember watching that and I talked to Shandy when we interviewed her, and she did not at the time disclose that she was a survivor of sexual assault. It was presented as consensual on the episode that she had cheated. They talk to Tyra about it in the doc, and she's just like, "Oh yeah, like
She
just
kind of
no."
pretended like she didn't remember. She was like,
She
yeah,
she's
I
like, "Yeah,
do. Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, the thing I will say is, I mean, and this is more like structural narrative stuff. I
mm-hmm,
do think the voices of the, I dare call them victims, contestants. Like in Shandy's
mm-hmm,
case, I think she was a victim. I think Kenya was a
yeah,
victim. I think Ebony
yeah,
could be
yes,
considered a victim as well, just because of their experience.
of how they
But
were
like,
treated.
I
Yes, of
think,
course.
yeah, I do think like having their voices, like, it, from my perspective, made what happened to them even fucking worse. The idea that these women
Mm-hmm.
went to this terrible thing, and then to have to cut to Tyra, and she's like, "Oh, who?" Like, she's kind of perplexed about what happened, and
Yeah,
then they show,
yeah,
and with the Shandy thing specifically, then they go to like right after the event happened, right after Shandy called her boyfriend, right after her boyfriend called her a stupid fucking bitch on
yeah,
national TV.
yeah,
Then
yeah.
Tyra's like, "Let's talk about cheating. Let's have a girl conversation about cheating."
Yes,
And I was
and
like,
yeah,
"Girl, you don't remember what?"
Right. Well, and also that it's framed in this way of like, okay, now we're just like magically gonna have a conversation about cheating, and like the same way, oh, we're gonna show Kenya eating this bagel over and over again, and then we're gonna make her the elephant. Like it was all framed as like, this is just what happens in TV, and I had nothing to do with it, even though we spent that whole top of the series doing that moment of how Tyra worked so hard to get this show to happen, and she went into all those pitches, and she had a direction and a vision, and then when the shit's going down, she's like, well, I don't know how that happened.
Well, and back to what you were talking about, like how you would love the producer to have pushed her a little bit more and like follow-ups. I totally hear you on that. I think they didn't have to in some ways because she still looks bad. I mean, she looks bad. I mean, and that's not to say she doesn't have she is an icon in her own right. She like, you can't take that away from her, right? Mm-hmm. But she does not come out looking good in any stretch of the imagination with regard to the show, and it's her legacy. It really is.
No, she really doesn't. And you know, to follow up on the apologies thing, she does offer an apology to Kenya, but even the apology, she said, "Boo boo, boo boo, I'm sorry, boo boo." What? Like, use her name.
Right.
It just came off as so flippant.
Yeah.
And even, you know, they talked about the "we were all rooting for you" moment. And even that, again, for them to say, what is the biggest mistake you remember on the show? And Tyra's like, what is the biggest mistake? And they said, maybe is it the Tiffany "we were all rooting for you"? And she's like, oh yeah, that. Yeah. And so it's like, okay, honestly, in the big scheme of things, that was probably the most memorable moment in the show.
For sure.
But knowing what we know now about Kenya being sexually harassed, about Shandy being assaulted, there was another girl that got sexually assaulted in season 1, Adrian. She was on a go-see, and a man flashed his penis, and it became a storyline on the fucking show. For Tyra to not bring up those things, and then she just goes, oh, yeah, sure, that's the one. It's like, man. Have you really listened to any of the feedback?
I probably, she's probably listened to it, but in order to get past it, she probably just has to ignore it. She has to really compartmentalize her brain and go, nothing I did was, there were some mistakes made, but on the whole, I did something good. It was good for me. It was good for the industry. And that's the narrative that she wants to tell. And she and her therapist have worked through that. You know what I mean?
And you know what? I'm going to say she's not the only one, because I felt very similarly about Mr. J, because they had a number of, Mr. J was...
Are you talking about J. Manuel?
Yes. Yeah, J. Manuel. He was nasty to
Miss
some...
J.
Not Miss J. I mean, listen.
Because Miss J didn't say anything. She was just there, but he was just like, girl. I was like, there were just shots of him, and he was just moaning. I was like, girl, you didn't say anything the whole fucking docuseries.
Well, you missed in the 3rd episode, they reveal that Miss J had a stroke. And so and that was...
Oops. Sorry.
Yeah, you're fine.
Wait, but no, he can still speak though.
You didn't know. Yeah, but I think that it revealed that some of his speech is limited and that he had to learn how to speak again. Tyra has not visited him. Like that was a whole, that was a whole part of it. But I was going to say with Mr. J, it really was, they talked about, like, for example, the episode where they put the girls in different races, and Mr. J is like, I was very uncomfortable. You can see. And then they show the clip. It's like, he doesn't seem uncomfortable.
Wait, and then there was a cop out. He's like, wait, you may not be able to see it, but I can see it. Yeah, we didn't see it. We did not see it.
He goes, when I watch those clips, I can see. And then they go to the clip and he's like, you guys are going to be different races. And the girls are like, wow, okay. The girls look a little uncomfortable. But
way
he's
uncomfortable.
Like, and you're going to be holding a baby. And again.
The baby of it all? Class, they were holding 3-year-old children of that ethnicity that they switched them to. And I mean, as if this is like 2002, 2000, whatever, early aughts.
Yeah.
We knew better. We absolutely knew better. And then they did it a second time on another season.
A second.
They did it twice.
Well, and the second time, Delon, what they don't talk about, again, that we talked about on the Audible podcast, is the inspiration was Barack Obama becoming our first Black president, because Barack Obama is mixed race. So they have them be mixed race. They were like, the most famous mixed race person currently today is Barack Obama. So now you are going to be, and they were in Hawaii. And Barack Obama was born in Hawaii. So that's like, that was the foundation of the challenge.
The problems are so vast. I feel like I don't even have like the actual like sociological vocabulary to unpack it. But like just like the beauty standards of it all, full stop. The idea that you're saying, hey, we're going to take you and make you this other exotic thing that we can take pictures of like you're in a fucking zoo. And like how it reestablishes beauty standards, not only that, but racism and white supremacy. Like it's crazy to me, you know?
Yeah, well, and I think what you said earlier still holds to be true. I believe that they thought they were doing something positive. Even the framing of like Barack Obama, our nation's first Black president, and Mr. J is mixed race, and so is Nigel Barker. And you know, I got to interview Nigel, and we did talk about those things, and yes, it was the early 2000s. And so it was a different time. Like the way we were talking about race, we were not talking about white privilege. Look, when I did Shit White Girls Say and I was on Anderson Cooper, I didn't know the phrase white privilege. Like I had literally never heard that phrase before. So it was a different time in that respect. And there were certain conversations that we weren't having in like the zeitgeist, so to speak. But this was an opportunity for them to admit that they had made those mistakes. And instead they were like, I was uncomfortable.
I had a problem with that.
I did. And I just did what I was supposed to do. And,
I did my job.
Tyra's line, bosses have bosses. And they said, anybody can get cut. And so I thought that meant me too. So I and she even says, I went home and I cried myself to sleep after I fired them. Sure, you did. I don't believe you.
Wow, I have to finish it because I really want to see the end of it. I also want to talk about this woman's teeth. Ready? Because class, they went so far.
Joni.
Let's give a little context because I will give them this. This was like the era of Fear Factor, they say on the documentary.
Yes.
It was a lot of Survivor, push yourself, throw up, all kinds of crazy shit was happening in reality TV. It was still the Wild Wild West. And so they did have to up the ante every season. But the idea that, so one challenge was they were taking them all to the dentist. And what was her name, Fran?
They do makeovers every episode.
Yes.
And usually the makeovers are just hair. That's usually just the extent of the makeovers. But this season,
was bad, by the way.
A lot of times that hair was bad.
Well.
A lot of the hair was bad, but Joni, who's the one that it was Joni and Danielle the same season, and Joni had like an extra tooth up here and some crowding, a snaggler, and Danielle had a gap in her teeth, and they decided that they were going to take both of them to the dentist in order to fix their dental issues.
And Joni had multiple teeth removed, and I think they whittled them down and put veneers in. And
she
then
got a whole set of veneers.
Danielle refused actually initially to get her gap closed, and then Tyra was like, "Well, if you're not going to close the gap, like you have to go home. You're going to be eliminated." That the manipulation, like that's crazy. So she went and did it.
And then to the next season to put a gap in some girl's teeth was crazy.
I mean, is that even hypocrisy or is that, I mean, it's just downright wrong.
Well, again, it just goes back to this idea that Tyra keeps framing herself as she was just a victim of circumstance. At one point, she even says, you guys wanted it. This is what you wanted. Say that. Just very victim blaming. And it's like, no, Tyra, you as the host and the executive producer of the show, yes, you don't get to make every single decision, but especially in the Joni and the Danielle of it all, Joni is a white woman, Danielle is a Black woman. What does it say that for Joni, who felt a lot of shame about her teeth, you empowered her by fixing her teeth, and then the Black woman says, no, I actually like my gap, and you say, no, you have to fix this if you want to stay here. And then when they asked Tyra is like, well, I asked some agents, and the agents told me, girl, that's a lie, because there's a Laura I forget what her name is, but they mentioned this model.
Yeah.
They mention her when they put the gap in the white girl's teeth. There are models with gaps in their teeth, and you knew she had that gap in her teeth when you cast her.
Right.
So like, how are you now going to be like, you're never going to get anywhere with that gap in your teeth? And with Joni, they gave her these veneers. And again, this is like, we are in an era now where like veneers are very commonplace and
Right.
everybody gets them. But like, this was kind of early in the veneer thing. And they did all of that in one day. And you're not supposed to do them all in one day like that. So Joni's mouth, when I interviewed her, she was talking about how there are scenes of her crying in the show, and they made it seem like she was crying because she missed her family. And she's like, no, I was crying because like my mouth was hurting
Oh,
so badly. And she has had dental issues ever since.
yeah. She
And she
said
didn't
she
have,
has a bite problem still to this day.
because they're not supposed to do all of that work just like in a day. It's supposed to be when people go to Turkey, they in Turkey for a week.
Everybody,
Day
wait,
by
sidebar.
day.
Everybody is going to Turkey. I was over the weekend. I was in New York visiting friends, and someone was like, "Oh yeah, so and so went to Turkey, so and so went to Turkey, and so went to Turkey. So and so got 2 procedures." I was like, "Oh my god, medical tourism is crazy."
I have a friend who got into a bike accident and knocked out all of her front teeth. And she does not have dental insurance. She was quoted at like $25,000 to replace those teeth. She went to Istanbul, which is like close to Turkey, and the whole thing cost her like $3,000. And
Isn't
when I
Istanbul
tell
in
you,
Turkey?
no, I might be
Istanbul's not
wrong.
in Turkey.
Class, tell us in the comments. I don't know my geography like that.
I think Istanbul's
But
like the capital of Turkey.
oh, is it? Okay, so maybe she did go to Turkey. It was definitely Istanbul is where she went.
Yeah,
But when I tell you, Talon, her teeth look so good
yeah. It's Turkey's
because
largest city.
what they didn't give her like the fake, like every tooth is perfect. They literally took a photo of her original teeth and like reconstructed, so some of them are like a little crooked. They're not perfectly white. Like they literally, like an artist, recreated her teeth. You would never know that she had gotten her
No,
teeth
what
replaced.
was the
And it
price
looks
tag?
$3,000.
That's what I hear. That is what I
And it
hear.
looks, I'm telling you, it looks incredible. It looks so, so good. And it's not, again, like they didn't give her, sometimes you see these people with the teeth and it's like a row of chiclets. It's just,
Chiclets, yeah.
they're the same color as my nail. They're just all too white. They're too big.
Hmm.
And so, I think that's a testament to one, where we are with the technology, but also in the US. I don't know if we got it like that here, but when Joni got it done, it looked fine on camera, but she was saying she was in a lot of pain. And it very much seemed like it was all about the drama for television versus like
Yes.
what is best for the contestants.
Yeah, and that was one thing that Ebony Haith said, and her story was kind of tragic to me too. Ebony
Mm-hmm.
Haith was on the first cycle, and she was the only black woman. She was bald,
No,
beautiful,
there was two
stunning.
black.
Oh,
There was
excuse
another
me, were
black
there
girl.
really?
There was another black girl, Robin, who they kept calling fat, and she was easily like a size 8.
Mm.
They kept
Was
talking
she the
about,
lighter
and she
skinned
was too
woman
old.
with the
Yeah,
long
she was a
hair?
lighter skin with long hair, and they kept saying she's
Aha,
too old, and she was like, I don't know, 29 maybe,
crazy.
and it's like, well, then why did you cast her if you're gonna say she's too old?
Right. I mean, the thing that Ebony said was, it wasn't, I'm gonna quote her, she said it wasn't a model show, it was a new way of making TV shows.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I thought that was really, really astute because like you look at I think the big question for us is who are consuming it now in 2026 is why? Why would you allow this to happen? Why would you do this for ratings? And
Yeah.
back to Tyra really quick. To talk about, Tyra was like, we did it for you. No, you did it for you, girl. You did it for
Yeah.
you because
One
you
thousand
needed the
percent.
ratings and you needed the money and it's prestige and you keep, you become with it.
Yeah. And
But
ultimately, Tyra gets the most out of it because a lot of the girls talked about how they didn't have careers after the
yeah,
show.
yeah, they were used. They were used for
Yeah.
weeks and they didn't get the thing, right? I mean, there
Yeah.
was one woman who was the runner up of the first cycle, who I think she got
There
signed.
are there are a lot of girls, I will say, that have had careers post show, usually not the winners. Outside of like Eva Pigford, she's now an actress. She was Eva the Diva. She's like does a lot of like BET, Tyler Perry type stuff.
Wasn't Winnie Harlow on
Fatima,
there?
Winnie Harlow was on there, but she
Winnie
didn't win.
Harlow's huge.
Yeah, she's
Mm.
huge. She did not win. There's a number of people who have gone on to be in entertainment. Yaya DaCosta also did not win and has done very well
Uh-huh.
for herself as an actress. Um, so it's not unheard of. I think it seems, from my understanding of the people that I interviewed and also watching the show and just like being in the world of pop culture, a lot of the girls who won and got the title really suffered the most because they were almost too visible. And this was at a
Uh-huh.
time where we weren't thinking about, now you're a reality star, you have social media. You get kicked off of a show,
Right.
you get millions of followers, you get brand deals, you're going doing club appearances and endorsements. We didn't have social media like that when, Top Model first started. So, you left the show and you just went back to your normal life. There was really no way to capitalize on it. And so I kind of wish that they had talked about that a little bit more, in terms of like, who are the people who have been able to kind of make a name for themselves. And
Mm.
I feel like that would be a more balanced view. Again, like I don't think you definitely need to talk about the bad as well, but I do think that Tyra had an eye for talent. Like a lot of people that she saw on those shows were able to figure it out in entertainment generally.
Well, I will say, like, it was legacy making, right? Let's like
Hmm.
one of the things I really thought was astute in her pitch when she was selling it to networks. She said, "I wanted to take American Idol, which Kelly Clarkson had just won in the first
Yeah.
season, was huge, and The Real World, and smash it together." And Ken
Hmm.
Mock had already done Making the Band with P
Yeah.
Diddy, yes, yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
all. Right, which, if that's the framing, like a Real World
Very
and Making the
successful
Band,
show.
it was not only successful, it was going to be messy. It was
Yeah.
bound
Yeah.
to be
Yeah.
messy.
Yeah.
But I will say there's no RuPaul's Drag Race without America's Next Top Model. There is no
And they didn't
Project
talk about that.
Runway without
Why?
America's Top Model.
And they didn't talk about that, which
I
I
know.
feel like was a hugely missed opportunity because, I mean, again, like for all of the criticisms of her, that show really created a format that
It
we
did.
now recognize and has been repeated over and over and over again. And a lot of like top model knockoffs, because Naomi Campbell had a show.
Oh,
I
she
forget what it's called. The
did.
Face. The
The
Face.
face. Or what's the makeup? There's a makeup one too. Anyway, but you're right.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
it's
Yeah.
but
I
that
wrote
I
I
mean the
wrote I
elimination, them living together, all of that, the format was the exact same.
Mhm. I wrote down a few things I also wanted to mention. Another one that I feel like they really should have pushed Tyra on: the crime scene photo shoot after
Mm.
Dion's mom had been shot and paralyzed, and then they made her be shot in the head. And
I
then on the
mean,
set, the photographer's like, "She's not really giving us much." Yeah, because this is traumatic,
well, and it's also not the photographer's fault unless he knew. Like he didn't
right?
know that all of that trauma, because they clearly like is it Deanna?
I think it was Dion. Yeah.
Dion. Yeah, she said they were looking for me to break down. They were looking for something that I
Mm,
was not going to give them. And
yeah.
I commend her for that. But the idea that you would do this just for some kind of TV is so
Yeah.
dehumanizing. And
Yeah.
like I will say, Ken Mock in the documentary takes full responsibility for the shoot as a whole, which was also kind of like glorifying violence and
Yeah.
murder and violence against women because they're all
Yeah.
women being choked and shot. And you're like,
Yeah.
what are we
Yeah.
doing here? Why?
Yeah.
This is
And
not
maybe that
modeling.
Yeah, and maybe this is the doc's producer's fault. Like I was glad that Ken Mock took responsibility for that, but like there was no general statement of like we did a lot of things that we thought would make for good TV and they weren't maybe the best decisions. We
Yeah.
didn't really handle like the body image thing. It would have made sense if maybe they had like a dietitian on staff or like a mental
Right.
health professional on staff. They knew some of the girls. They had girls passing out. They saw girls getting
Oh, that
thinner.
girl fell on the runway. I
Mhm.
screamed. Oh.
Yeah, they knew that these girls were having long hours on set where they weren't getting a lot of sleep, where there wasn't a lot of time to eat, where they were doing the judging panels were often like hours long. They knew that these girls were being put in stressful situations, and they didn't do anything to mitigate that stress. And again, it would just be very easy to say, "Look, we did what we thought was the right thing to do," but in hindsight, a lot of it wasn't the right thing to do, and they just didn't like that. Would have, for me, like gone a long way.
Yeah, and you know what I would argue? I would argue that I think they did know that it was wrong, and they kind of just did it anyway.
Oh,
Like, you
yeah,
know what I
I think
mean?
so.
Like, some of it
Yeah.
was just like pretty egregious. The
Mm-hmm.
Shandy thing,
Mm-hmm.
the weight stuff, like that just feels like it just made for good TV. I also want to bring
Yeah.
up Janice Dickinson,
They
who was
didn't.
a judge on the
Where was
show.
she? Where
Oh,
was
well,
Janice?
she just did go through something physical. I think she fell on a reality show
Oh,
and like
okay.
had to have major reconstructive surgery, so she might not be
Mm-mm.
doing so hot at the moment. But even still, like, who, if anybody has stuff to answer for, that's always been Janice's personality.
Mm-hmm.
But like, if anyone should have been grilled, it should have been Janice, and being like, girl, why was that always necessary? Was that always necessary to
Yeah.
be that mean, you know?
Yeah.
But it made for good TV.
When I interviewed her, she was very upfront, like, that's who I am. And that's what the producers wanted. And I was hired to be the bitch. She was like, I was hired to be like the Simon Cowell, using the American Idol
You know
model.
what? I, I, I'm grateful for that. The truth. Tell me the
Yeah,
truth.
that's how I felt too. It was just like, look, we're not going to beat around the bush. You said some things that were like hurtful, and she was like, look, I was there to be the brutally honest. That's what they wanted. That's what I gave them. Like
I
I
was
came
paid
and
to
I
do
did.
that.
That's what I came and did my job. And again, love her or hate her, the honesty I think goes a long way versus the like, I didn't know. I felt uncomfortable. Yeah, but you stayed. You stayed and you kept
Right.
doing the shitty thing. Here's what's interesting that you missed, Delon, because you didn't watch episode 3. Tyra revealed that Top Model is returning for a cycle 25. And she says, you have no idea what we have planned for cycle 25.
See, and this is why they're doing a documentary. This is why she's
Mm-hmm.
doing it, because she
Yeah.
wants to bring it back.
Yeah.
God
No,
fucking
my
me.
question to you, Delon, is do you think we can do a top model in 2026? Because I have many thoughts, but I'll let you
You know,
start.
I will say this. I think there's room for it. And why do I think there's room
Mm.
for it? Because people are still devouring those housewives. They love the
Mm-hmm.
fucking housewives. They
Mm-hmm.
talk about it religiously. And people are clearly, the idea that people were watching this during the pandemic because, or going back and rewatching it anyway, it feels like there's fodder for it. And I will also say another point, and my last point here on the question is, Hollywood has not changed very much.
Right.
Hollywood and beauty standards and the fashion industry has not changed very much. And so I appreciate, again, what Tyra's mission was with all of this, but I think people still like skinny, blonde, white people. and
Yeah.
that's kind of the remit. I was that Les Moonves, who
Mm-hmm.
was the head of UPN at the time, who was
Mm-hmm.
left under scandal with CBS because of all of his sexual harassment stuff. Tyra was talking about he didn't want this Latino girl
Latina
on the
girl, and they got
first
in a fight, and they got
season.
in an
Latina,
argument
excuse me.
about it.
Yeah, and then they found somebody else, right? Mr. J was talking about how they brought in Nigel Barker because the network said, "Hey, we need a straight
A straight
white
man.
hot guy,"
Yeah.
and that would a dig to not only Mr. J but Mrs. J, right? So like
Yeah.
that was already permeating in the back end. So
Mm-hmm.
nothing's really changed, I don't think, in the
Yeah.
industry.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, it's gonna. I bet you it'll be gangbusters. What are your thoughts?
I think in 2026, you don't need to go on a show like this in order to become a model. Like with social media, you can just get discovered, right? Like there are so many people. I've seen so many really cool photographers creating their own like elaborate sets and doing all this really cool, transgressive, arty stuff on social media and it opening doors for them that you don't really need to go on a television show anymore. That said, I think people will still sign up, even knowing what we
Mm-hmm.
now know about the process and how difficult it is and how the girls were mistreated.
Exploitative.
People will absolutely be running in droves to get onto the show, but I just don't think, the I think about the American Idol and all of those other shows, no one has been able to produce like a star since Kelly Clarkson. Like I don't know anybody that's come out of X Factor outside of like,
Mm,
what we had Fifth Harmony and we had
the Harry Styles
uh
group. What's that group? One
I don't know,
Direction.
One Direction. That's
Yeah.
it. That's not a lot,
Oh, Susan Boyle.
she,
I said that as a joke, but Susan Boyle, has she had some albums? Y'all know Susan Boyle, class. Tell
Okay,
us if
all
you know
right, but you
Susan
know what?
Boyle.
Look. Let's say we give you Susan Boyle. That's not a lot of
That's
people.
that's not a
That's
lot of
not a
people.
lot. That's not a lot. And
Well, you know
so
who
I
the
just
star is. The show is the star. The
right.
show is uses people
The
for
show
ratings.
and the show and the judges are the show, the host and the judges are the stars, and
Yeah.
everybody else is just fodder. And the thing that I saw a lot of victim blaming happening, as always happens whenever people come forward and say that they were taken advantage of. A lot of times people sign these contracts and they don't realize what they're signing. Not to say that they are absolved of the responsibility to read the contract, but these
Mm,
shows prey on people who don't have a lawyer in the family. They
yeah.
prey on people who are down on their luck. They look for people who Tiffany, the girl that got yelled at, they knew she had anger issues. She came on season one she auditioned on one season. She got in a fist fight at casting and they cut her and they said, you need to go to anger management. And then they brought her back. They knew that she had, her grandma's lights had been turned off. I mean, these are people who are like, this money would change my
Right.
life. And so
Right.
they are more willing to not really read through they're just like, oh my God, I'm just so excited for this opportunity. They're not going to sit there and be like, wait, it's like on page, whatever. And so, there are a lot of people who, especially the state of the world right now, that are like, this is the opportunity that I need to get off the street. Right. And so
It's also
I
the
don't know.
drunk narrative of Hollywood. We're drunk on it. Like it's literally
Mm,
Hollywood stardom is a drug. The
hmm.
potential that you might be extraordinary is an absolute drug. It's that it's akin to, everyone's just a temporarily embarrassed millionaire.
The
Right. And that's
rags
how
to
capitalism
riches.
works. Yeah, rags to
Yeah.
riches. Robin Leach, what was that show where he would go to rich people's homes? Um,
He was up in them Epstein files, Mr. Robin
was he
Leach.
really? That
Sure
makes
was.
sense. I
Hmm.
forget what class. If you remember what Robin Leach's show was, Lifestyles of the Rich
Lifestyles of
and
the rich and
Famous.
famous.
Yes, popular
Yeah.
show, huge.
Hmm.
Pimp My Ride, or
Hmm.
MTV had another one. Cribs,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
of that. We just have this narrative that like I too can be like that. So
Hmm.
we're American Idol. All these shows are always going to have, to use your word, Fran. They're always going to have fodder. They're always
Yeah.
going to have people coming and
Yeah.
trying to better the situation, because most of us are under the poverty line in this country. Feel like
Yeah,
it anyway.
I just think a word of caution to anybody who's thinking about auditioning for this show. I would skip it, and I also just think like what we've learned about the modeling industry, even like the biggest models, the whole fashion industry is very exploitative. Like there's really only like five girls who are making decent money,
Making money.
making money
Making
like
money.
making money. Like everybody else is being really taken advantage of. Like, again, we're the stuff with the Epstein files, we see a lot of wealthy people taking advantage of these young girls, flying around the world and finding impoverished girls that don't have family support systems, and then whisking them away and having them do these long hours, and they're on these photo shoots with like creeps and stuff. To me, it's like what we know at this point, I can't imagine anybody wanting to sign up for something like this. But, I think we will see people sign up.
Well, and like you said earlier, I saw this guy on TikTok who was like, "Hey, you want to be famous? You want to be an actor?" He was like, "Get in shape and just start posting shit every day,
Mm. Yeah.
nonstop." He's like, "It'll
Yeah.
happen for you. You'll find it, and it'll happen for you."
Yeah.
Because social media is the way to do that. You are your own business now.
Yeah.
If you want to, it won't always hit, but like sometimes it do.
It's democratized the industry for sure. But I also think, again, that's why a show like this just feels like very much of a different era. And that's really what they talk about in the last episode of the series, is how Top Model really kind of like lost its footing because it was just like competing with social media. They had to kind of like top themselves every season. It just got
Hmm.
more ridiculous and like less about modeling. And so it's just like, yeah, I think we should leave this as a time capsule of the past, learn the lessons from it, and then just like leave it in the past. I don't think the show needs to come back at
Yeah,
all.
and it's a little tainted. The brand is a little tainted, if I'm honest.
1000%.
Yeah.
All right. Well, do you want to move into comments from the class?
Yes. Do you have any comments from the class?
Yes, I wanted to highlight this comment from Wendy P3613. And Wendy says, in reference to the halftime show, you can't be a colonizing imperialist nation and then be mad about representation. Okay, Wendy, you better not
That's
one lie. And this also just reminds me, or the thing we talk about a lot, Delon, people don't know their history.
that part. That part.
Yeah, y'all
I
don't
was
know
just
your
watching.
history.
Donald Trump put some white supremacist in some position, and he was being grilled by by Congress. And one senator was literally like, or
Oh,
representative,
I
he was
saw
like,
this.
"So tell me, what is it about white culture that is being replaced? Like, tell me
Mm-hmm.
exactly." And he went
Mm-hmm.
on about Irish and Italians and this,
Those are
and
nationalities, sir.
he was like, "So you're talking ethnicities?"
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I need to come back to white culture. What is being replaced? And then he's like, well, what is so different about white and I assume black culture? He's like,
Mm-hmm.
well, the food and the music and the what did he say? The churches are very different. And he was like, okay, so white culture is being replaced
And so our
by a
church is
black
being
church?
replaced? Yeah,
Like
like what?
what? Your point makes no sense. It's
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
racism flat out. Period.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Go ahead. I don't have a comment from the class, so
Oh, I
forgive me,
have another
class.
one.
Ooh,
I have
please.
another one. This comes from ACPII. Just to add to the conversation about disability, at the age of 32, I became physically disabled and now use a wheelchair. The amount of times I've heard, "You're so strong. I'll pray for you." And "if I was you, I'd just die," is mind
Oh,
blowing. The ableism runs deep and wide through the world. That is out of control. I can't believe someone said that to you. I mean, I can believe it, but also it's hard for my mind to process that anyone would think that that's appropriate to say to someone.
wow. That's crazy,
Yeah.
man. I would just,
Yeah.
I don't understand what context that is said. That's crazy. I'm so sorry that
Well,
that happened
also
to you, but
like
thank you for saying something about sharing it here on the pod with us.
and also like why would that like what are you supposed to say to that? Like, well, sucks to be me. Like what am I supposed to say when you say, "Oh, I would just die if I was
Well, I hope
you."
it doesn't
Like
happen to you. That's crazy.
yeah, like it's just a terrible thing to say to someone. All right. Well, class, now it's time for everyone's favorite segment, the glow up, where we give props to those who've turned themselves around without our help. Delon, do you have a glow up this week?
I do.
Mm,
Did you hear about the Scrubs reboot?
I did.
So, class, if you don't know, Scrubs, that TV show, the medical comedy, is being
Mm-hmm.
rebooted and it's starting February 25th next week.
Yeah.
I'm happy for those actors. Did you watch this show, Fran? I never watched this show.
I didn't really watch the show. I watched it every once in a while. I watched a few episodes because I did get called in for it, but
Okay. Okay.
yeah, but I wasn't watching the show when it was on.
I mean, I'm happy for those actors because uh, Zach Braff is the
Mm-hmm.
lead,
Mm-hmm.
and like I've
Yeah.
seen him in some things. I've seen Donald
Mm-hmm.
Faison a little bit, but I
He
don't know.
wrote a Garden State.
Yeah, exactly. Zach
Yeah.
Braff. But
Mm-hmm.
after that, I really didn't know what they were doing. Now they're in these, I think, T-Mobile commercials, the two of them, which, good
Mm-hmm.
on you. I'm happy that they're working.
Yeah.
It's executive producers are also the creatives or executive producers of Shrinking and
Mm-hmm.
Ted Lasso. And
Yeah.
just watching a couple of the trailers, I was like, it gives Ted Lasso vibes. Like it
Yeah.
gives
It's
like
very heartwarming.
heartwarming. And I don't know, class,
Yeah.
let us know if you watched Scrubs. Was it always that heartwarming? Because it really feels like it has that like Ted Lasso-y, like saccharine
Yeah.
tint
I
to it.
I went and watched the pilot because I took a meeting with the team for the Scrubs reboot, and I really liked the pilot episode. It's very like surrealist. So like it's about this guy, and it's like his first week working as an intern at the hospital, and every time he has kind of like his imagination runs wild, like you see his imagination come to life, like in the hospital, like he's fantasizing about a girl he wants to date and they make out, and then like he's kind of going in and out of his consciousness, but then like it has these heartwarming moments because they are in a hospital and people die. And
Ugh.
so like it's a comedy, but they have these moments where they're learning lessons about how to talk to the patients and dealing with imposter syndrome, and it's really cute. Like, I thought it was very funny. Again, not the type of show that I normally gravitate to, but very much like a feel good slapstick buddy comedy.
Yeah.
And then
And
the Ted Lasso thing, I think, is you are right in that sense that like there's the kind of like the everyman leading the show that's kind of like dorky, but you really root for him and you want him to get the girl type of thing. So
yeah. And I
yeah.
think you're right about that slapstick. There tends to be a lot of physical comedy from what I've
Mm-hmm.
seen in the clips.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. I think the world needs something like this right now. Like, I think
Yes.
Hollywood needs it because Hollywood is just looking for old IP to recreate because they're not
Yeah.
willing to take any risks right now.
Yeah.
But I think the world tends to need, when things are really bad and everything's on fire currently, we need something good and something we need a Ted Lasso, right? So
Yeah.
I'm hoping it does well. I might watch a couple episodes.
Yeah, one thing I think is really cool about Scrubs, and I know they're doing this season too, is like they have a very diverse cast of people working in the hospital, and they always populate it with like, or the original series like populated it with a lot of like up and comers, like people who maybe hadn't had, series regular roles. And so I know a few people that are in the cast of the reboot, but I love that. I feel like, again, that's something we don't see enough shows do. So yeah, I maybe will put it on my list to check out too.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. Yeah, that's mine. What's yours?
My glow up is going to go to defeating imposter syndrome. And I talked to you about this, Delon, with my new job. And I just wanted to share this as kind of like a lesson for anybody who is in a new role, because this was something I had to remind myself of, that like it's hard being the new person, but also being new is kind of like a superpower, because then you
Mm,
get to ask questions. And that was like the glow up for me, was I was like, wait a second, instead of thinking about all the things I don't know, I'm going to admit that I don't know something. And then I'm going to use that as an opportunity to like not only learn, but also maybe like poke holes in the way that we're doing things. Because I'm like,
hmm.
I don't understand. Why are we doing it this way? And then suddenly people are like, why are we doing it this way? I don't know. And I'm like, yeah, that's right. New girl. um, so, and I also just want to say, Delon, thank you for being there for me when I reached out to you to say, like, friend, I'm going through it.
Girl,
Um, so,
always.
that's my glow up too. Is this just the ability to recognize when I'm having a hard time and to like lean on the people that I love and I care about, because it's too easy for us to sometimes go inward and just be like, oh my
Oh,
God, I'm spiraling, I'm knitting a sweater, I'm freaking
oh,
out. And so instead, I said, you know what? I'm going to phone a friend. And yeah, you and my partner were such a big help for me. And I really tackled my second week at my new job. And so
good.
when I shared that, like I was using that as like a way to get through, I got so many nice messages from people that were like, yes, when you're new, like enjoy that new time. Cause once it's over, they'll be like, bitch, you should know this. So
You ain't take no notes? You ain't write that shit down? Yeah, dude.
exactly.
Imposter syndrome is crazy. It's also because like we talked about this a little bit. When you have like a specific standard, when you know the way you show up, when you are
Mm-hmm.
type A, when you work really
Mm-hmm.
hard, it's hard to feel like you're at a deficit. It's hard to feel
Yes.
like, and I will say this, life isn't life without those moments. Like those are
Mm-hmm.
growth moments. They
Yeah.
suck. I'm about to
Yeah.
go into a one myself where I'm directing and start rehearsal tomorrow, and I'm like,
Oh
oof, am
yeah.
I prepared? I am prepared. I know, but
Yeah.
like it's just
Yeah.
the unknown. It's just the idea that things are going to come up, and
Mm-hmm.
I'll have to control it when it comes up, but I can't control it now. So that's life, and like thank you for the moments, and thank you for letting us get through them. And
Yeah.
for friendship, right? 100%.
Oh my gosh. Well, class, that's going to wrap up this episode. Tell us in the comments if you watched the Netflix documentary about America's Next Top Model. Did you enjoy it? Will you tune in for Cycle 25? Why were they called cycles? Pitch us why you think they were called
Because they were
cycles.
all women. Is that why?
Well, they did a
They
man and woman season
they
one
did.
time.
They did. And you know what? That's when I got an eating disorder. I'm kidding. But I will never forget this guy being on there who said he was 6'1" and 175 pounds. I was like, what? How?
Yeah, that's lean. That's
Yeah,
lean.
really.
So tell us in the comments what you thought of the documentary. Will you watch the new season of Top Model? Why or why not? Or maybe there's another TV show, a movie, a book, a celebrity that you would like us to fix. You can email us, lemmefixitpod@gmail.com, or send us a tagline and we might use it on the show.
And remember, every week we are here on Wednesdays. Hit that notification bell if you want to know when we drop an episode. Also, subscribe if you're new to the channel, and welcome to the class. We really appreciate you. I'm Delon.
I'm Francesca, and this was Lemme. Wanna be on top?
Model.